Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew Kleinowski. I hope you were able to join us for part one with Dave Patrick. And I gotta say, hold on to your batons and your seats and everything. This episode is moving, dramatic, and just a fantastic time. Enjoy. Let's talk about you becoming captain of the track team. How does that happen at Villanova?
Yeah, you know what? That's a really good point because Jumbo, he wasn't one for titles, but it was kind of like one of the things that happens. It's kind of like you build it and they will come. Whether Jumbo announced it or whatever, everybody just looked at me as you're the leader, you're the captain, you're the one who's really going to help guide us through some of these things. We went through some really difficult times with the New York AC and Martin Luther King, assassination and all that. I was really fortunate at my junior year and senior year. I was really perceived as the de facto captain of the team. And I had a lot of the black guys, which would be a nice confirmation. They used to call me Cap. And that was a special thing.
Yeah, I bet. Let's talk about 1968. What was going on in the world and what then happened with NYAC meet?
Yeah, man, that was a really amazing time with all the civil rights unrest and all the riots and the protests and so forth going on. And then it was like a Tuesday or Wednesday that week, Jumbo comes to me and he said, "You're going to have to hold a meeting." And I said, "What is it?" He said, "The black guys don't want to run in the New York AC meet." I didn't really understand all of it back then, but it was like New York AC discriminates. They don't allow blacks and they don't allow Jews in the clubs. And the guys don't really want to go up there and run for an organization that discriminates against them. So Jumbo said, "You have to hold the meeting. I'm out of this. It's whatever you guys want to do. I'm not making a choice of whether we're going to go or not." Jumbo was under a lot of pressure to bring the team, as you can imagine. Okay. So was I. So we have the meeting and we discuss the pros and cons of it. And what we decided was, I said, "Look, here's a piece of paper, write down yes or no that we boycott or don't boycott." I collected all the closed votes and I tallied them up, and we voted 17-0 to boycott that meet. And that sent reverberations throughout the world, because when has someone done this and made a statement as an athletic organization, well known like Villanova, that they are not going to participate in that meet because of principle? And so it was really hard on me. The year before, this was the 100th running of the New York City. And the 99th running.
You were defending.
Yeah, I ran 3:59 the year before in the 99th running of the race. And I was good friends with Ray Lump. And I dated his daughter. We go out to dinner at Mama Leone's after the races and everything. So he calls me up. He gets me in the dorm because we had phones in the dorms, right? And someone comes down and said, "Hey, Dave, someone wants you on the phone." So I go to the phone and it's Mr. Lump. And he's pouring his heart out saying, "Dave, is there any way you can make this work? If you don't come and the team doesn't come, then the meet's not going to be worth anything per se, because you guys dominate everything." It was hard because I had a personal relationship with him and he was a good guy and very good friend per se. I said, "I really wish I could make this work so it's right, but it's the principle that the team is standing behind. And I have to, as the captain, that's the choice that we have to make."
And you personally voted to boycott too.
Yeah, we 17-0. We voted to boycott that meet.
What happened at the meet? What was the impact at the meet? What did you hear?
Yeah, from the standpoint of the impact of the meet, it was, they were sold out before the meet. So it was I don't know how many people came to the meet, but it ended the running of the meet. Can you imagine? We boycotted that meet, and then New York AC never had another meet after that.
It's harder to imagine a more impactful decision to do
And,
what
just to take it a step forward, yeah, our team was really close. We would have dinner together. And that's one of the things I think makes a big difference from now versus back then, is that we did everything together. We would laugh at each other. We would make fun of each other. I remember the time I was drinking my milk and a bar of soap comes out. That one of my teammates put a little bar of soap in my milk. I'm like, what the hell? What? And I didn't find out until 50 years later who it was. And I got even with them, by the way. But to make a long story short, as close as our team was, when we boycotted that meet, it created a solidarity that was, it's hard to explain. It just was a special moment of the bond that was, it was unbreakable. And so when we went to the Nationals a few weeks later in Detroit, Track and Field News said, USC will run away with the team championship, and there's going to be a race for second. 5 other teams could race for second, and we were one of those 5 other teams, right? So we knew that something special was about to happen, and nobody else, no other team did. Certainly Southern Cal didn't. Not only did we win the meet, we almost doubled their score, right? We beat them by, I don't know, maybe it was like 40% greater than what their score was, because I defended in the half and Larry won the quarter. We won the mile relay. Vince Pizarro scored. Irv, I think, won the hurdles, was second in the 60, or we won the distance medley. It was like the blessing that you get that you're not sure how it's going to turn out. But we were blessed because we did the right thing. It's like in life, you ask people to do the right thing, and then you ask your manager or your coach. You ask your people to do things right, and then you ask the manager or your coach to do the right thing. And we only did things right as a team. We did the right thing of what we felt was right to boycott that meet. Could we done things a little differently and say, hey, we'll give you a year grace period if you'll take this under consideration at the New York AC meeting and so forth, and didn't really think about that as maybe a different stepping stone to do it. But we just decided that we're going to cut bait. We have to do what's right for us and for the team. And it turned out to be the biggest blessing ever because it just united our team even stronger.
But 1968 was still 1968. And what was the difference with the Tennessee meet?
Oh, yeah, the Tennessee, my whole 3 or 4 years there, we never ran a meet outside of Villanova. So this is the first time that we're running a national powerhouse in a dual meet at Tennessee. I think we were ranked second or third or second and fourth or whatever, the top teams in the country. So it was a powerhouse meet. And it was getting billed as that. And then what happened was just a few days before, Dr. Martin Luther King gets shot. He gets assassinated in Tennessee. And now all of a sudden, this is all over, as you imagine, the news, and it's anything you talked about. And the black guys as well were saying, we don't want to go down there because they don't like us down there. And we're really concerned about going down there because we're concerned about what could happen. So Jumbo said, okay, Dave, you got to call another meeting. We called another meeting, and we're all there and we're all sharing ideas and talking about it. And, you know, what an unbelievable, sad day this is for America. But what would we want to do? Do we want to show strength or do we want to show weakness? Do we show strength and say, look, yeah, we abide by and we believe in a lot of things that Dr. Martin Luther King believed in and said, but we also know that is it best to just pull away and not go? Or is it best to show that we're not afraid and show that we have the strength to go down there and persevere and get through this time and have a great track meet? So we decided to do that. So we flew down and we got in the bus. And one of the greatest statements or sayings or passages that have ever been said, still so reminiscent in my mind, is because those guys were scared. Honestly, our black guys were scared. And so we get to the hotel and everybody's on the bus. And Larry James hollers out, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not going to be the first person off this bus. We all just started laughing because it was a truism per se. That's some of the things that they were thinking about. That this is civil rights area. This is a time when there was discrimination. This is where blacks had water fountains and whites had water fountains, and you couldn't do this if you're black, and you couldn't do it was a change. And then it was billed as somehow the north south, maybe the black white kind of competition. So here you have Irv Hall running the 100 to 200 and 120-yard hurdles against Richmond Flowers. Richmond Flowers is no slouch. And I guess he played Giants football for how many years?
NFL, yeah.
He was a world-class runner. And they've got a world-class quarter miler named Hardy McElhaney that Larry's going to run against. And he respects Hardy because he's a good runner. And then Jumbo knew that we were going to probably sweep the mile, but we needed to win the 800. So he dropped me down into the 880 against Larry Kelly, who had just won the Nationals the year before in Provo. He said, no, okay, you got to take care of Larry. We'll get the mile relay. So we virtually won every race. Larry ran 45.2 for his open quarter. World record's 44.9. And he ran 45.2. And then Irv wins the hurdles, and I think either the 100 and the 200 or the 200, one of the others. I think he won 2 out of 3. We won the 400-meter hurdles. We swept the 2-mile. We won the pole vault. That's one of the Vince Bizzarro. He was a good pole vaulter. We won the mile relay. I was fortunate I was on that mile relay. I ran like a 48-1 split for yards, which was pretty good, but it was 309. We ran 309 mile relay. Thank you, Larry James.
And a dual meet.
Yeah, and that's for yards too, right? So that's 308 for meters. Yeah. So make a long story short, we won like every running a race. And here's what's really unbelievable is that was in a bowl and it was grass all around it. So you're recessed, the track's recessed. And we had 10,000 people come to watch that meet because it was billed as, it was like an event to see, right? Still, the Tom Black stadium record for attendance that we set in 1968. So it was a big deal. And so we won all the running, they went to the field, and at the last minute, they put in the 35-pound weight throw. And like I told the guys on the team, we don't have anybody who can pick up 35 pounds. They have the shot putters, they have the discus throwers, they have everybody, all these football players that can really pick up and throw that ball. So I was talking to Tom Donnelly about it, and he said, Dave, we lost that meet by 1 point. In the paper the next day, it says, Villanova wins track, Tennessee field. And that's what it was. So it was a great experience to be able to be there, to be able to show our strength, to be able to show the type of running program that we had built at Villanova, and to compete with a team that's got everybody. They have long jumpers and high jumpers and discus throwers and shot putters, and which we didn't have. But it showed the strength of our running program. And we were treated really well down there. We went to fraternity parties after. We had really a great time. They were just the best host ever. And you'll never forget an experience like that. But that was a transcendental thing as well, just like the New York AC, to be able to have that happen within a month.
Yeah.
Within a month or month and a half, those two things happened that really had a big impact on the world.
It's what happened in that room with your team acting as one to make those two decisions. It's amazing. Let's just talk a little bit before we get into you after college and the Olympic trials. The East Coast, you're down to Tennessee, and then there's this big college out in the West Coast, Oregon. And you're only going to see them at one time a year. What was the chatter, and how did Jumbo look at them, and were they ever in your mind? What was going on? How did that look back?
That was a rivalry, because honestly, we didn't like them and they didn't like us. Now, not as an individual person per se, but the fact of competition, that we felt that I would have loved to have a dual meet with Oregon. That would have been like just the creme de la creme, but we felt that we could compete very well with them. We would have been faced off with some of their really great runners as well, and with our really great stable of runners. And so we respected them, but like Jumbo, it's still hard to believe that. And Jumbo was not political, and he really told the AAU and the NCAA's a piece of his mind so many times. Probably was a reason why it's hard to believe that he was never an Olympic track coach. For all the people and all the Olympians and all that he's produced, that he was never. Now I don't know if they asked him and he just said no, or they just decided that they weren't going to ask him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
he was a rare, not unique, but a rare case of this is the businessman who came
exactly
after work and coached the
for an hour and a half
best team in the country.
He'd come after work, and for an hour and a half, he'd be there to train us. And a lot of times, we knew he wasn't paying really close attention because a lot of times he'd be hitting his pitching wedge inside on the football field. And then he would have a stopwatch, right? And then we would go by the quarter and he would holler out a time that we knew was wrong. We're like, there is no way that we ran it because he didn't start to watch. So he's probably just saying, oh, 67. 67? Oh my God, that was more like 60. And that was on the track where the first part was all like quicksand cinders that you had to get through. But get back to Jumbo. He was a great businessman. He was a good motivator in a way, led by example, but he was a disciplinarian too. He took no crap from anybody. And that's probably why the AAUs and the NCAAs didn't like him, because he didn't kowtow to them. And they wanted to be arm's length from him, which may be part of the reason why he didn't even know about that, about the meeting at the about the Olympics, because they know that we got to keep him away per se. But I think that Jumbo was good. He different strokes for different folks. He did recognize strengths and weaknesses in different people and tried to give them appropriate kind of training and working out to bring out their best in them.
So they decided where the Olympics are going to be held fairly far in advance. And so while you're running at Villanova, when did Mexico City start looking as something, oh, wait, Mexico City, I'm going to be out?
I guess probably I was fortunate enough to make the cover of Sports Illustrated. That was right around, I think it may have come out right before I ran that 3:56 in the IC4As, where the first time that 5 guys broke 4 minutes for the mile in 1968. At the end of the article, I remember saying something like, there's nothing like running in the Olympics, and winning in the Olympics was like, I don't know, the last paragraph of it. So I've always been thinking about running the Olympics. Even when I was a 10th grader, you always dream about it. You always think about it. You always like, wow, wouldn't that be great to be able to do that? So it was always on my mind, but it certainly became more on my mind junior year because I had such a great year indoors and all. And then senior year, things were starting to come on. I was healthy again, really finally putting in some training without being hurt for a period of time in between. So I was able to train really from when I got rid of the fracture, like in March, April, May, June. I trained for 4 months straight, which is pretty good. And then knowing that I could keep training for another 3 or 4 months before the Olympics happened. Yeah. But I wanted to be at my best for the Olympic trials in Los Angeles Coliseum, the end of June, because I knew that's my pathway. If I could just win that race, then I could be on the schedule and the program to be at my best in October. Yeah. That was my thinking.
I just want to go back to one thing that I'm just curious about, and then I want to talk to you. I'd like to ask you about the whole process of getting to Los Angeles and training there and doing the trials.
Yeah.
When did the tonsillitis
Oh, yeah. Oh, my tonsillitis thing when I was running.
Yeah, because that was a spectacular race, and maybe another near-death experience.
That was one of my roughest times to go through injury or health issue, and that was right after I had that amazing indoor season, set those world records, and I was named the Indoor Athlete of the Year in Track and Field News for 1967 indoors. So right after that, and that's in March, I started coughing a lot. I started like wheezing a lot. So it was like right at the end of March, and I kept getting a sore throat, and I was like just not feeling right. I never got that diagnosed. I just they're just thinking, hey, that's when I said our doctor. We didn't really call him doctor. We called him Mister, because you would think that someone would be able to find out what was going on with me, right? Because I couldn't train that well. And I was always coughing and wheezing and so forth. And my throat was always like hurting and like on fire all the time. So that was the Penn Relays race, the 2 mile relay, the only race I lost. In the Penn Relays was, I was sick. I really wasn't at my best. And we went out real fast in the first quarter. Kaczynski and me and Mark Wingen Reed, we just blew it out the first quarter in the 50, and I wasn't ready to run a 50. And so I remember coming down the straightaway, and I put Tennessee behind me. I put Michigan behind me. I put Wisconsin behind me. And I'm finally trying to get to the wire, knowing that I'm just exhausted. And out of the right corner of my eye, I see a red jersey coming, and it was Fordham, and it was Jack Fath. And he got me right at the tape when I'm like falling. I'm falling from exhaustion more than anything. And so I fell across the track and I passed out. And I didn't wake up until I was in the locker room on one of the tables. And my parents happened to be at that meet. And they don't really know what's happening because they carried me out of the stadium because I was gone. I was unconscious. And finally woke up in the training room back there. What's going on? What kind of happened? So what it was, whatever ounce of energy that I had, I expended it in that race because I didn't want to get beat and I was not at my best. Because Jumbo even said, had Dave been at his best, he'd have won by 4 seconds. But I wasn't at my best. So I had to run. So somehow I still retained my IC4A Mile championship under that condition. And then had to go to nationals in Provo. I ran the half. I think I ran 148 something, but I came in fifth. That was Larry Kelly who won that, who I beat at the Tennessee meet the next year. That was really one of the hardest times for me because I knew I wasn't right. Something was wrong. And June 30th or July 1st, and my family doctor diagnosed the tonsils problem. And he said, Dave, he said, we got to get these things out tomorrow. He said, they're so badly infected that I got to get these things out. So I took a local, as a matter of fact, and had them cut them out, which I would never do again, but I did. And he even said, these are the largest, most infected tonsils I've ever removed. So for those 2.5 months, I had that poison that was draining into my lungs that I was not able to run. But I kept running because they'd misdiagnosed it, or they could have snapped those things out at the end of March and I would have been fine.
Yeah, but back a week later.
Yeah. And we really didn't have the medical facilities to do that. We didn't have the medical doctors per se. And I just did my thing. And I was just hoping that the people who had responsibility in other areas would do their thing. But it never happened. It never happened.
So what happens in 1968 and you get an invite? What's the program to go to Los Angeles? How early do you go before the trials?
Yeah. So the middle of June, right? The middle of June, I won the nationals in Cal Berkeley. I ran 3:39. I beat Morgan Gross record. He had the meet record. So I was able to beat the meet record. And it was a tough race. There was a bunch of Oregon guys in there. And it was on a red clay track. And I'll never forget that finally Wilburn had the lead. Dave Wilburn from Oregon had the lead. And I finally got up to him with 300 yards to go. And I wanted to go past him, but he wouldn't let me go past him. So we're launching an all-out sprint from 300 in, all the way around the turn, all the way down the straightaway. I don't know, I think we ran like 52, 53 pace for that last 300. And I was able to pull away and beat him. And that was on that red clay. And the first lane was just totally I mean, we had to really wear long spikes to be able to get
a horse track.
to be able to get into that clay. And Tom Donnelly told me, he said, Dave, he said, you can't run in that first lane. He said, that first lane is just not good. You got to get out a little bit. So I was running most of the time in that second lane because it was so beat up. And so we won that. And as a team, that was really remarkable as a team, because in 67, 68, we won the nationals in cross country. We won the nationals indoors. We won 5 championships of America at Penn. We won the IC4As. And we finished third in the outdoor NCAA. And that's without Frank Murphy running because he was sick. what an amazing accomplishment to do that as a team. And so that's the race before the Olympic trials. And the Olympic trials are in LA Coliseum. And even in all the documentation, this is quote per se, the winner of the first Olympic trials is on the team, is guaranteed a spot on the team, provided they demonstrate competitive excellence at the final trials. That's what the wording was. Now, if it meant the top three, it wouldn't say competitive excellence because you wouldn't even need the first trials because it's going to say, and we're going to have another trials. We're going to take the top three. This trials doesn't mean anything. They couldn't do that because they wanted people to come to the meet. They're not going to come to the meet if it's not a meet that means anything. So at least they would see the winners being promised a spot on the Olympic team.
It's interesting. This was going to be a unique thing because if you're in the trials, you could say, I'm running for third, I'm running for second. When the race develops, you say, okay, I'll take it. This was all or nothing.
Exactly. You want to win it because then you get the pass to October. And as in training, and this is one of the things that I will always believed in, is that I didn't want to have to peak and come down and peak again. And that's what I would have to do if I didn't win in LA.
We'd have to peak for the trials in Tahoe.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I won that so I wouldn't have to go through another peak and then retrain another peak to get ready again for October. So I wanted to be able to have sustained strength training through all that and then layer on the real speed before the Olympics to really get ready to run my best race.
All right. So we know what happened, that they changed the rules. And they didn't change the rules in Los Angeles.
No.
They just went along with plan A. And I know Sam Bear's out there. Jim Ryan gets a little bit healthier, and they're going to be battling for the next two places on the 1,500 meters, along with the Oregon guys and everybody else.
Yeah.
So what happens after LA, and what was your approach?
My approach was, okay, let's get up there. Let's do some high altitude training. I'm feeling pretty good that I can run as well as anybody else can at high altitude because that year at Laramie, Wyoming at 8,000 feet, I still ran 34th in the national championships. So I know that I can handle high altitude. And that's why it was confusing that they want to try to say, okay, we're going to find people who can run high altitude who can't. That's crazy. That didn't work. Yeah. So I'm training and I'm running more distance in the morning. It was beautiful out there to go run some of the lakes and some of the back parts. And Marty was my teammate. He was also my roommate. He and I shared the same trailer together. Okay. We were training differently because he was training for the Olympic trials and I was training for Mexico City. So we really didn't a lot of times run workouts together because he was running different kinds of workouts. But in the morning, I would also go for runs. And I remember one time I went to go out for a shakeout, like a 3, 4, 5 mile run. And I got caught in the experience of being in a zone. And I ran 9 miles and then realized I had 9 miles to run back because I was watching this beauty of Lake Echo Lake and Lake Tamarack Lake. It was like in a zone and I couldn't stop running. That afternoon workout was pretty tough after running like 18 miles in the morning, which I never ran that far in the morning. And so I was doing well. I think I won every 1,500 meter race that we had in the trials. And then we did run one sea level race when they took us to Hayward Field in Oregon to run a meet at Oregon. And that was the time where they did my VO2 max, where the day before Jack Daniels says, hey, I want to get your VO2 max because I've got all these guys. I got bachelors and I got Ryan, I got Lindgren and whatever. I want to get your VO2 max. And so the race is on Saturday. And he said, the only time we can do it is Friday. And I said, yeah, I kind of like to rest up a little bit on Friday for that race because I know Oregon will be gunning for me because they had 3 guys in that race. And I said, I got to beat those guys. And so they said, well, that's the only time we can do it. And I said, no, okay, we'll do it. What's involved? He said, you have to run 3/4 in 3:05 in order for us to get the reading. And I said, wow, that's pretty quick. That's not loafing, that's for sure. And so he said, yeah, and also we'll have a car running next to you and we'll have this contraption on your face. And then we'll have a long arm that'll go to the car and it'll get all this data that we need. It sounds crazy. but that's what I did. So I said, okay, I'll do it. So I did it, got my VO2 max. I think it was 78.6, I think.
Yeah.
And
Hall of Fame level there. Yeah.
yeah. And so I did that. Now, one thing was surprising is I had the second highest lung capacity. I think it was 200 milliliters, whatever that number was. The only guy who had higher was Jack Batchelor. He's that 6'7" runner.
He's got 6 inches on you. Yeah. 6 inches long on you. Yeah.
So that probably was a good contributing factor in terms of performance. We did that. And I'm happy with it. We got it done. And then the mile is the next day. I think we ran 1,500 meters in Hayward Field. And I know those guys wanted to box me in and they wanted to strategically keep me from winning that race. But I was able to outmaneuver them and be able to get in a position where I could win the race. And I took off like I think the last 100 and won the race. So that was a good feeling. All I can tell you is I'm undefeated at Hayward Field.
Yeah. You are almost undefeated that whole season. And
yeah, I hadn't lost a race pretty much until.
Yeah. So just to divert, we chatted about this, but what was it that made you such a successful racer?
I think maybe goes back to my discussion with Ron Delaney. When I was a freshman at Villanova and at the Palestra watching a basketball game with Ron Delaney, who was an idol of mine, of course, because he's a 56 Olympic gold medal champion from Ireland. And he was everybody. Everybody knew who Ron Delaney was. And I'm like sitting next to him at the Palestra and I'm like in awe. I'm a freshman, a lowly freshman, right? And I said to Ron, can you help me understand how you get ready? What really gets you ready for a race? And he said, Dave, I'm going to see if I can remember verbatim what he said. Look, he said, there's a fine line difference between being worried and being concerned. If you're on that other side of that line and you're worried, then all that adrenaline you're building up, it's going to be negative energy. You're not going to use it productively. And you most likely don't feel that you can win the race. And as well, you probably don't even have a plan for the race or a backup plan for the race. You're just kind of going along, being part of it. But if you just take that line and you move it to the right a little bit, and now the word is really concerned, then you are prepared. You're going to use that adrenaline that's rushing through your body in a positive way that's going to produce an extraordinary performance because now you're prepared. You know what you want to do. You have a race plan. You have a contingency plan. You respect the competition, but now it's your time to prove it. And I'll never forget that. That probably was, other than a few other things with Glenn Cunningham, my brother, my good coach, and all that, and the things that they shared with me to try to help me get ready. I will never, ever forget where I was and who I was talking to with Ron Delaney and his words of wisdom that resonate with me today.
Yeah, and I know you've passed this stuff on and helped people. We'll talk about some of those impacts you've had on other people. But you leave Hayward Field having nearly lost a race. And then what happens back in time?
I tell you what, it's something I don't want to think about sometimes because I've struggled with PTSD for my whole life because
it's crushing. I know. I appreciate whatever you want to talk about now is fine. It's a crushing thing. And I encourage people to read the book where there's some detail of it, the Villanova story, Touching Greatness. They can find some of this out, but whatever you feel like talking about now.
So I find out that I didn't know what the meeting was about. I didn't know. No one knew. My coach didn't know, right? We had no one representing us. We didn't have a lawyer there to hold our rights. We didn't have someone to say, wait a minute, you're reneging on your promise to these people. They've been training their whole life for this. And it just gets, all of a sudden, it's a new chapter. It's a new strategy. It's a new program. I've got to put myself on a rush training program to try to be at my best in such a short period of time when it takes months to get ready for a race like a final Olympic trials when you thought you were on the team and now you're not on the team. And so
competing at the highest level. They walked in the room and said, hey, What do you think we throw out those Los Angeles results and start all over? That's
Yeah,
basically what they said.
yeah, and it was Bowerman called this meeting, and it was hastily called. We didn't know what it was about. And so now I'm in the room with friends. Because you can have 10 guys up there training, but only one guy who wins. And they're talking about, if I remember correctly, because sometimes I don't want to remember any of it, but they're talking about potentially even taking a vote to amongst the athletes to throw the first out. I'm going, I know where that's going to be, right? And I remember saying something like, I don't know what, but I think we should send our best team. And I guess that got interpreted as well as to say, okay, then we'll throw out the first trials. So whatever happened in that maneuvering when Peyton Jordan is out of the country and he doesn't even know about what's going on. And
He's the team coach.
He's the head track coach of the 68 team. And he's out of the country, and someone calls this meeting and thinks that they can resolve this. They think they got themselves into a problem that why should we give passes to the guys who won in LA if they can't run in altitude? That's kind of what they were like figuring. Then you know what? Hell, we'll throw out the first Olympic trials. And that doesn't mean anything. We'll just renege on our promise to those people. And so that's what happened. So they throw out the trials within days of the final trial. And now I got to be ready to run that most important race. And I remember saying, okay, I got to do something. So I went to the track and I ran a 3/4 and I ran it in pretty good. I ran 2:58 for 3/4, which is really good. But because I needed to know where I was. So I came back to the trailer and Marty was he was upset with me about it. I said, Marty, I had to go out and ran 3/4 at 2:58. He said, why didn't you tell me I'd have run with you? And I pretty much said, you're on a different program than I am. You're already tuned to what you need to do to get ready. I'm nowhere near ready to be ready for that big race. And I need to now win if I can, or be in the top 3, because now I'm no longer on the team. And so I remember, and this is the more tragic part of it. So I guess Bowerman thought, hey, I did something here. I got the chance. I got the first trials thrown out. Marty thinks that he threw it out because he wanted to give a better chance for the 3 Oregon milers to make the team.
Yeah. Instead, they were shooting. They have a chance of getting 1, 3, or 2 or 3.
Yeah. I got 3 spots. And it's kind of like Jack Daniels, that renowned physiologist, was asked one time. He said, Jack, if you won in LA, what would you be doing? He said, I'd be training for Mexico City. That's what I'd be doing. And everybody knew that it was not the right thing to do, but my coach didn't even know about it. I didn't have my coach. Jumbo was not at Lake Tahoe the whole time I was there. He just showed up for the final trials, right? Yeah. So we had no one representing us. We had no lawyer. We didn't even know. You would think that they would have let our coaches know that we wanted to try to train straight. We wanted to change what was promised at the Olympic trials. Jumbo would have gone crazy. Jumbo would have they would have been in court before you ever know it. But then it was done. And now I'm dealing with the fact that I now have to get ready in a few days to run my most important race ever. And it's the first time, and I don't remember when I'm on the starting line, because in the semifinals, Marty and I tied in the semifinals. We both ran 3:48, which was 4 seconds faster than the final time. And so I was sprinting down the straightaway, and feeling like my thigh muscles were singeing, that there was burning up. And I did not know what it was. And I never told anybody about it. In hindsight, I'm sure it was probably some part of a hydration issue where they didn't have any moisture or whatever. They just felt like they were singeing, you know what I mean? And so I never felt that before, and I never said anything to anybody. So that's creeping into my mind saying, what is that? I've never experienced that kind of before. I'm now dealing with the self-doubt. And Ron Delaney said, I'm now dealing with the worried side of the race. Wow. Because I can finally say that when I'm on that line, I didn't have a plan. I didn't know where I was going to run. I didn't know how I was going to run it. I really didn't know per se the outcome. And I felt like I was just lost, that I didn't have a purpose, that I was not ready to run the most important race of my life ever after dreaming about this for years and years, and to be there and knowing that I'm on the line and I'm not ready to run my best. And I came forth. It was really just tragic per se for me, and I deal with it. It's a hard thing to deal with. It's like the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. That Jim McKinney say on the Wild World of Sports, where I had the thrill of victory when I won the LA trials, and not knowing I also got the agony of defeat of finishing fourth. Finishing fourth Olympic trials is one thing, but finishing fourth when you were on the team and taken off the team is another thing.
Yeah, obviously not something should happen. For people who aren't athletes, who aren't elite athletes, who aren't at this level, I'd say, imagine you won the lottery. And then they said, you know what? We're going to draw a winning ticket again. No, it's not skill-based, but it's the same thing of gut-wrenching.
The basketball team.
I did what I was supposed to do. I played fair, and this happened. But let's lift this up to the reunion that happened
2018.
50 years later at Villanova.
Yeah, so I'm putting together the 50th reunion of the 68 track team because we have a lot to celebrate. And here is at Penn Relays, right? In fact, I put together, I probably should send it to you sometime, a 17-minute video photograph presentation that I displayed at that meeting, which even had Larry James' 400-meter race in the Penn Relays in it, and had us winning all these different things. And that it was really nice. And so I see Peyton Jordan, who's an Olympic track coach. I hadn't seen him since 1968. He was in Stanford, as he was the head coach at Stanford. He flew over at 92 years old. At 92 years old, he flew over from Stanford to the Penn Relays. I thought he was attending the Penn Relays. I thought there was some special events or whatever going on. And I happened to run into him and I said, Mr. Jordan, would you mind staying to watch the presentation that I put together, this video? And so I think you would appreciate it. He said, yeah, I'll hang around and watch that. So I had gotten like 60 guys to come. Everybody was there. And so Marcus gave me he said, Dave, I'm going to fund this reunion. Yeah, I'm going to fund it. Cocktail or hors d'oeuvres. Well, just you do your best. You bring the guys in, right? So I'm like going crazy. Hey, come on, let's go. If you're going to make it, let's make it back. So everybody's coming back. It was great. And then Marcus gets up after the presentation, which went pretty well with the guys and all. Marcus gets up. He said, this has really been something. He said, Dave put all this effort and work into this to make this event what it is right now, but he doesn't realize that the event is about him. And I'm looking at him, I'm going, what are you talking about? So then he calls up Peyton Jordan, and Peyton Jordan comes to the microphone. And I'm not sure, I have to paraphrase, I'm not sure exactly what word or words was, but he said, there hasn't been a day gone by that hasn't bothered me about the injustice that was done to your great Villanova Miler. And he said, I'm here to correct that injustice and to make Dave an official member of the 1968 track team.
50 years later, and in front of all your mates.
And it's so nice that so many even Olympians were there. Like John Carlos was there, Tommy Farrell was there, Norm Tate was there, Russ Rogers was there. All these guys are like great friends of mine, and Larry was there. And it took me by surprise. I really didn't know how to respond right away to it all, but I was very appreciative and thanked him for the recognition. And he gave me 68 sweatshirts and polo shirts with the 68 Olympic logos and all that kind of stuff, which is really cool. It gave a lot of stuff away. But so I remember when I got up and I thanked everybody and I said, I can forgive, but I just can't forget.
Yeah. Yeah. It was such a nice gesture of them to arrange that, and Vernon to do that. It doesn't correct what happened, but it acknowledges it from everybody, and everybody in the room. I'm sure it was amazing. Can we talk about the impact you had? One example, when you reached out to an Olympic 1,500 meter runner, and I don't know how well you know him. I know you knew his dad. But let's talk about the letter you wrote to Matt Centrowitz.
Yeah, I had pulled away from doing anything with track and field for a long time because I felt like I really was a loser when I came back from the Olympic trials. In fact, it took me a few days to get back there because I didn't really want to face what was going to happen because I thought I let my parents down, I let my school down, I let myself down, I let my teachers down, I let the community down. So it was hard to overcome it. I turned down things I shouldn't have. I turned down to be the Grand Marshal in the Special Olympics meet that they had in Baltimore that year. I turned down trips to run in Bermuda and different places because I wasn't at my best, and I would only go and run if I was at my best. And I turned down opportunities to do things because I was still, per se, grieving. I didn't realize that what I was going through was that my thoughts and feelings were exactly opposite of my actions, which I was diagnosed of having like reactor syndrome, that this PTSD had really created a real problem where you didn't want anything to do with track, you didn't want anything to do with meets, you didn't want to do anything with going to the relays, you didn't want to do anything for a period of time because I couldn't cope with it. Because I was always thinking of myself as I was a loser, that I wasn't worthy. It wasn't until later that I decided that I've got to do some things. I helped some people coach some teams and they get some good runners. And then I decided, you know what? Matt Centrowitz Jr. was a runner in Maryland. And I decided that, you know what, Dave, take the time to write a letter and share with him everything that you think that made you who you were, everything that you learned from Jumbo, every little piece of wisdom, whether it was Ron Delaney's wisdom or whether it was Dr. Glenn Cunningham's wisdom or whether it was my high school coach's wisdom. And what was it that you could also share with him that would really help with the mental preparation that's required to really reach the top of the top? So I took a lot of time and I wrote this letter. It was like 2.5 pages that I wrote and I sent it. And coincidentally, Matt got the letter, I guess, on his way up to the Penn Relays. And he told me afterwards, he said, Mr. Patrick, I read that letter like 4 times on my way to Penn, right? So he's going to run in a high school invitational mile. And which I was fortunate to win the inaugural high school invitational mile. And now he's actually running in it. And so in retrospect, and when I talked to him and saw him at the state championships little of that year, he said, Mr. Patrick, I read that letter like 4 times before my Penn Relays mile. And it was so appreciated that I can gather something. Then I ran into Matt Sr. at Penn Relays one time, and he said to me, Dave, he said, that was amazing that you would take the time. And although Matt was an working guy, we didn't like,
Yeah.
but this superseded any personal thing with because they're runners, they're good guys, you know what I mean? But I didn't know at that time he was going to Oregon, but Matt Sr. was at Oregon. So
Of course, yeah.
yeah, so I'm talking with Matt at the Penn Relay. He said, Dave, that was really a wonderful thing that you did because he had his dad, an Olympian. He's getting good stuff from his dad. His high school coach was great high school coach. So it wasn't that I was trying to take anything away from them. They've done wonderful things. It was just that maybe I had a little different perspective. Maybe I had some other tidbits or pieces of information that maybe he hadn't really thought about. And like Matt Sr. said, he said well, that letter was just so amazing for my son.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a kind of letter that doesn't come from a dad. It comes from a hero or an outsider with no hidden agenda. You had no agenda except could I possibly help you? It's a wonder. It's your life and these monumental impacts from NYAC, Tennessee, to all the way through here decades later. And who knows? Gold medal winner in the Olympics probably has his copy of the letter, and that's the letter you wrote.
Yeah, and if it's just one little tidbit of something, but at least I feel good that I made the effort to try to share something that may have been something that was good for him. And that helped me with the PTSD a little bit, that I reached out when I didn't want to do anything with track and field, that I was able to reach out and do something like that out of just helping someone.
To go back in time to 1968, you won the distance medley relay. Yeah, the DMR win was to you just another race.
Yeah.
And it was important, but it was a race. And then what happened in the following 16 years from the time you started the winning streak with the distance medley relay, and Jerry Boma wrote a book, and I think he took the title from something you said. How did that happen?
Yeah, so interesting. Jerry and Jumbo went to me, said, "Hey, I've got this Canadian miler that's really just terrific, and he has an interest in Villanova." I said, would you host him for the weekend? Would you just spend some time with him? And yeah, so I did, and so forth. And I could tell that he was just a number one top grade person, not only from athletic capabilities, but also just a sound, down to earth, just work special ethics, and just a gem of a person. And so, I told Jumbo, I said, you can get him, you need to get him, because he is through and through legit and genuine. So he came to Villanova, and I remember how many years ago, maybe 4 or 5, 6 years ago, we were at Penn together, and he said, "Dave," he said, "I got to write this book." And I'm like, "What book are you talking about?" He said, "I got to write the book about the streak." And I was being naive, and I said, "I don't really know what streak you're talking about." He says, "In '66, when you came from behind to beat Georgetown in the distance medley relay, and then you subsequently won it your junior and senior year," he said, "that started a streak that Villanova won the DMR for 16 straight years." And honestly, I don't remember that I really remembered that, but it's resonating. I said, "You gonna write a book about that?" He said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, where has that ever been done? And it will never be done again, ever, at Penn Relays. No one. If you win 2 years in a row, you're lucky, or 3 possibly. But to win something for 16 straight years, because we just handed it down, handed the baton down.
Generations and generations of runners.
Yeah, exactly. And all of a sudden, I'm working with Jerry. I'm writing some stuff up.
Okay.
Okay. And he said, "Yeah, I really got to write that book." So I would do some work for him about the era that I was in, and I would send it up to him. And then he would send it back to me, and I would look at it, and I would call him back. I said, "Did I really write that?"
Jerry Bowman. Yeah.
You made this thing come to life. I know I can write okay, but man, this thing is really right on target, and how you use the adjectives to really bring things to life. So he is like an amazing writer. So he kept working on it. He was traveling all around the country and bringing in all the groups, LaCory and the Mason and the Bellinger and the Page and Coughlin and all that, and pulling all those pieces together. A remarkable a piece of work. And I was speaking at one of the Villanova breakfasts a few years back. I was talking about the team and so forth. And I came up with the phrase, and I said, "touching greatness forever together." And that resonated with Jerry. And he said, "That's it." He said, "That's the theme in a way. That's like the bonding thing that we've felt all this time, because it pulls it all together. Touching greatness forever together." So I guess he used that as part of the theme. And on a side note, he had me up to Edmonton for the Canadian National Finals, and we went out for a run that morning. And it was, I don't know, 5 or 6 miles, but it was probably beyond what I was capable of doing, but I did it anyway. And then after we finished, I was a little tired, and he looks at me and said, "How you doing?" I said, "I don't know about you, but I'm running twice as hard and going half as fast." And we cracked up about it. Needless to say, I didn't know he's such a prolific writer, and he can write poems, and he can write anything you want. And he actually wrote a poem that is in the back of the book about twice as hard, half as fast. And I think he's even written some more now, and maybe a quarter as.
Yeah, it's done the a couple decade later update. Yeah.
And so he pieced that all together. And that book that he did, as was the New York Writers Association of the Year Book of the Year.
Yeah.
And I got the opportunity to accept the award on his behalf, because he was still in Edmonton. And it was, I don't know, it was done, and all of a sudden the awards being made and everything. And so I was at Villanova, and on his behalf, I got to accept that award for that treasured book that I will always remember. I have an autographed copy of it, and it just that he brought to life probably the culture and the experiences and just knowing people, knowing that we're just runners and we have a life and we're not just always just competing and running. We're doing other things too. And we're building relationships and bonds and that will always last forever. That once you build the relationship and the bond, when you're taking the baton, there's an extra something there. There's an extra incentive. There's an extra feeling. There's an extra, you know what? I'm going to spill my guts because I know everybody else on the team is going to spill theirs too. And it's that kind of a feeling that you build. And I think that book really grabbed the essence of culture, of extraordinary performance, of doing the things that are not that you would ever think would be possible to do. And he just wove so many personal stories and all in there that made this thing come to life. And it's just a wonderful book.
Yeah, it's magic. It's on the bookshelf of the podcast website. So I keep encouraging people to get that and just revel in it. Dave, it's great spending time with you. I think you personify the idea of doing spectacular things, doing these things that you're giving it your all, whether it's deciding as a leader that the team needs to make a decision together and make a historic impact and build the bonds. And in the moment, it's just doing the thing that's right, but it's, it's moving the impacts that you have and all the way through the speaking that you do and the letter to Matt Central. It's something great to celebrate what you did in all those ways and what you made out of it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I know it was an emotional period for me at times in here and I'm just trying to just grab it to pull it together, but it's been a challenge. I appreciate you taking the time and reaching out because, it's a good story to share. And there's maybe some good lessons and some other good things about really my grit is don't quit until you reach your full potential. And regretfully, I never got a chance to do that because I let this disease or whatever it is of that PTSD overtake me and I've had to deal with it.
Yeah. The thing you brought up about the bonds and the friendships we form and everybody who ran in the 70s and was part of a team can relate to that. And so many of each of our own relationships crossing paths with the people that we met in the spirit of competition and in the spirit of self-discovery and those turbulent times. You just do a magical job of describing it and sharing your experience.
No, thank you. We're all in this together. We're all brothers in a way. I appreciate you reaching out and giving me the opportunity to do this. It's been good for me.
That's great.
I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.